Welcome to Aging Gracefully, where growing older is celebrated, appreciated, and respected. I'm so fortunate I'm able to interview the most awesome, inspiring, and unstoppable adults and advocates with the best information available to us today as we are all getting older. Today, I have someone who is definitely aging gracefully, Mr. Glenn Blair. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm pleased to be here. It's a good concept. I'm glad I'm here.
Great. And you are so fun. So I'm going to try to not be laughing this whole time, but you really get me going. You have a great sense of humor.
Thank you. Thank you.
May I say how old you are?
Of course.
84 years old and so handsome.
Ooh. You could say that again too if you wanted to.
Yes. And I know that, Glenn, you've been widowed not even 2 years. So you've been through some hardship recently. You're on the recovery side of that.
Yeah.
You have a beautiful daughter.
Yeah.
And life at 84 is really interesting. You make it interesting.
Well,
and that's what I love about you.
Oh, thank you.
So we always go back a little bit, talk about your history, where you grew up and stuff. So we'll do that quickly and then come up to speed and some of the fun things that you do now and have done.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
So you were not born locally?
No. I was born in Seattle, Washington. And that's where most of my family live, cousins and so on. We're one of the few in that family that moved to the Midwest.
Okay. Because you actually didn't grow up there, you ended up growing up in
Urbana, Illinois, where the University of Illinois is located,
Went to school there?
Went nothing but Illinois. Went to grade school and then high school, which was part of the University of Illinois, and then undergrad at Illinois and then law school at Illinois. So I'm kind of an Illini, I guess.
And then you just had finished your law school, I believe, and that had kind of kept you out of the draft, and next thing you know, you're drafted.
Yeah, I got drafted immediately after. It was peacetime, but
Thankfully.
the draft was still going, and I'd had deferments to get through school, so I was drafted right after I got out of law school.
Okay.
In fact, I had just barely enough time to take the bar and become a member of the bar. I wanted to do that before I went in the Army, so I thought that would help me get a good assignment if I was a lawyer, and it did. It did.
All right. But you didn't really have your career, actually, just in law.
No, I never really practiced because when I got out of the Army, I took a job with Standard Oil of Ohio and had a whole series of jobs where law was somewhat related, but I never literally practiced law.
But that's what brought you to the Cleveland area.
It did, yeah. I had, it was solely that. I just saw an ad for Ohio marketing trainees, and I thought, wow, that would be a good place to go.
Yeah.
And it's turned out to be a wonderful place. I just, I started with Ohio, and I met the woman that became my wife of 55 years. And it was just an outstanding career. Ohio was in its heyday then, and we were just a really good company. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, people here, if they're my age or older, I mean, they would remember Ohio, but other people might wonder who we're talking about, right?
They think about BP, and that's kind of what the time I left was around the time that BP and Ohio made a deal. And as a matter of fact, I spent 2 years in London working for British Petroleum in that era. And then not too long after I came back from London, I had an opportunity to retire early so that I had full retiree benefits, and that fit perfectly my sort of wild plan to teach college as a second career. Yeah. And I was able to do that. I got a 1-year assignment at Ohio Northern and then came back and became a full-time tenure track faculty member at Baldwin Wallace. It was perfect. It couldn't have been better. Didn't have to move. And it was just a wonderful 23 years at Baldwin Wallace.
Wonderful. And you told me, I think you said something about luck in life.
Well, I'm not quite sure what I said because I talk a lot, but my theory on luck with regard to just almost anything is that it is a combination of being prepared and having the right circumstances occur. And I know I can recall thinking about career planning. And there was a General Motors, I think, president who was asked about his career plans, how he became head of General Motors. And he said, well, I worked hard and I answered the phone. And if somebody called up and said, we have a job in Europe we'd like you to take, I could either say yes or no. That was his career planning. Just do a good job and wait for someone to ask him to
and
do
take
something.
the opportunities as they come.
So anyhow.
Yeah. All right, so even though you're working your career, in between there too, you're a musician. You've always been interested in music.
Yes, I have, always, yeah. I actually, I'm not sure we even talked about this, I actually sang at Carnegie Hall with the Cleveland Orchestra Chorus.
2 times.
Oh, yeah, I did tell you.
I put it in my notes. I was impressed.
Okay, well, I'm pretty proud of that because I snuck in because I could sing tenor. And you always need tenors. Anyhow, and it was when George Zell was there and Robert Shaw, so it was the heyday of the Cleveland Orchestra Chorus, and that was a lot of fun, yeah. And I still, what you're maybe thinking of is, I still play the trombone, and I've gotten no better than I was when I was 15. That's kind of sad, but that's true. I play in a couple of geezer-type organizations.
Maybe when you grow up.
Well, maybe when maybe if I practiced. What do you think? Yeah. I don't think so. I think it has to do with talent.
Well, speaking of talent, you also did some acting.
Every once in a while, yeah. Not often, because it's hard to do that when you're working for Ohio and so on, but I did, yeah.
But you managed, and I have a clip, and we're going to show that right now.
Let's get going, boys.
Yes, sir, Mr. Schwindel. I've already started sorting.
Prince, as head of this entire mailroom, I would like to tell you I am very pleased with your work.
Thank you, sir.
You really have an inborn gift for mailroomery.
Well, thank you, Mr. Twimble. Well, coming from you, that's a big honor.
Hello, mailroomery. I mean mailroom.
Tell me about that. That was back in '86, I think,
It was.
right?
I had just retired at age 50. That was the earliest this retirement program would let you retire. And they were doing a production of How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying at Huntington Playhouse. And there's a role in there, a guy named Twimble, who has been working in the mailroom for 25 years. I'd been working for Ohio for 25 years. It was a natural. I didn't have to act. I don't know how to act. I just played a guy who'd been in the mailroom for 25 years.
Oh, fun. So have you continued to do any acting? Or
Well, a few things, but I did something at Ball and Wallace, but that was mainly because they had a part that in West Side Story where they need an old guy who's trying to corral these rough students. And so they picked a couple of faculty members to play that role, and I did that, yeah. I did do that. So.
Great. So another interesting thing about you is that you're also a professional model. So that's why I said how handsome you are.
Oh.
I didn't want to forget to bring this out too.
Okay, well,
because it's
thank
just
you.
been since 2000, 2001.
It was.
Right?
My wife, like every other good thing that ever happened to me, was responsible for that. She had read an article in the newspaper where the gal that was head of Ford agency at that time had said that it was easy, that good-looking young men and women are a dime a dozen. What we need to get are older people who, they don't have to be good-looking particularly, but they have to look like older people and not be disgusting. That's kind of the criteria. And my wife thought I met that criteria, so she organized something. I went down, interviewed, and had a lot of fun doing that. Did quite a few ads.
There is a little bit of strangeness or irony in that too, when just recently I'd asked you, well, tell me about one of your modeling opportunities, and you told me about a hospice.
That? Yes, indeed. The last
brochure?
big shoot I did was about 3 years ago, and it was for Hospice of Western Reserve, and they were just taking pictures of older people to be patients in effect, and they just did a lot of print for all of their various advertisements and their online stuff, and occasionally in the paper. And the irony was that my wife, who died a couple of years ago, went to the Medina Hospice, and they passed out a brochure, big fancy print thing, to all the people who were bringing a loved one in to give them instructions on how to kind of handle this whole thing, because it's obviously new and heartbreaking to everybody. And in that, my wife noticed on the cover, she said, "That's your hand, isn't it?" And I said, well, it kind of looks like it, the wedding band and all that. And when we opened it up, sure enough, it was one of the shots that I had taken. I'm there with another woman about my age, and we're kind of gardening together or something. And it was me. So I was in this brochure for Mim's final days, which was kind of ironic and sweet in a way. I don't know quite what to make of it.
Yeah.
But that was my last real good shoot.
Okay. So I'm impressed at how unstoppable you are, all the interesting things that you've done. And the reason why you and I had connected originally, and I hope we stay friends forever, but was because you had seen a presentation I'd done, and then you reached out to me, and I was thrilled. You told me about a project that you had back in 2001
2001,
or 2?
yeah.
Okay. Tell me about that project.
Well, that's the thank you note project. I wrote a thank you note a day for a whole year, 365 consecutive thank you notes. And the thing that kind of always amazed me, I finally figured it out. I just woke up one morning wondering if I could do that. And I didn't even know why I would want to. It just seemed like kind of an interesting thing. Apparently I had a thank you note or something I needed to write, and I got to think, what if I wrote a thank you note a day for a whole year? Anyhow, it turned out I could do that. I did do that, 365 notes. And it wasn't until I was about halfway through that I finally figured out why I was doing it.
Tell me.
Well, it was because I had had a 5th grade teacher who had just an incredible impact on me. I was left-handed and I wrote funny and everything else. And she didn't try to straighten me out. She just taught me how to write so I didn't smear the ink. And she was an avid music gal, and she set up a voice ensemble in the 5th grade that I was in. And oh my goodness. And some other things. She was a fabulous teacher. And of course, at the time, I'm 11 and I wasn't any deeper thinker then than I am now. It never occurred to me that I should be grateful for that. Because you're just a kid.
Right.
And some period later, I thought, my heavens, that was very important to me. And then some years later, I thought, I should thank her. And you know how this story is going to end. You keep kind of putting it off, and finally one day, I went on a big Google and every other kind of search to try to find her, but I had, as you know, waited too long. So I never wrote her a thank you note. And that stuck in my craw and has bothered me ever since. And I think the thank you note thing really is a product doing that. I kind of decided without really thinking much about it, I didn't ever want to get into another Miss Myers regret thing. And the silly thing I did at the end of my project, she got my 365th letter, and I addressed it to Leo Grade School, 305 Oregon, to her name, knowing full well that it's going to end in the wastebasket. But somehow, I don't know, somehow it kind of relieved me. I felt better for having done that. But it was just Miss Myers was the reason for it. And not every letter was like that. There were actually kind of 4 different types of letters.
Let's talk about those
You want
4
me to?
types.
Okay. The first one I've just set aside for a moment because those are just letters that we all should write. So it shouldn't really been a part of a special project.
Like maybe you received a gift, unexpected,
right. Just a very nice
something.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second category was people I didn't know at all who showed up in the newspaper or on television or I heard about, who I thought had done something really spectacular. And I just wanted to let them know that. An example is a Washington, D.C. Math teacher who taught a group of young black girls in the 8th grade, I think, how to play chess so well that their team went out and was beating the cushy suburban fancy schools. I just thought that was a great story.
Fantastic.
So I wrote a letter. That's one kind. The second kind was to celebrities, not because of their celebrity status, but because of something else they did. And Paul Newman's a good example of that. I didn't write him because he had blue eyes and was a great actor. I wrote him because he had this incredible hole-in-the-wall charity that he started that just raised zillions. And he raced motor cars. And he had the tremendous good sense to marry and stay married to Joanne Woodward, which I thought was really a good thing to do. And I got back a response from him. I'm sure it was from him. And the fun thing about those letters was kind of trying to track him down in the first place and then seeing if you got some kind of a response.
And you did actually track everything.
Oh, I tried to. I tried very hard. The only thing that stopped that is that the 83rd letter that I wrote happened to be written on September 11th, 2001, the Twin Towers. And the anthrax scare that followed that really kind of put a stop to getting responses from celebrities. Drew Carey, for example, he never even opened my letter. He just stamped with a stamp that said, Mr. Carey no longer accepts mail. Please email him at this address if you want something like that. That was kind of sad. But one of the really interesting thank yous that I know got read by the recipient was to Joan Baez, who I'd always thought was a marvelous singer, very good looking, never crazy about her politics necessarily, but she knew what she was talking about. But I had met her, sort of, on 2 occasions. One of them was on a flight to Seattle, Washington, back when I worked for Standard Oil of Ohio. And she was on, it was first class, the old DC-10 kind of thing. It was almost like a bar that you're riding in. And there's a soldier in there with a young child, a baby, an infant. And Joan Baez walks over there. I can figure out who it was. And she talks to him, picks up the baby, and starts to coo. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be disgusting. She's going to act like a big star. And after about 2 minutes, she's going to pass it back and take bows and everything. She didn't. She practically walked from Chicago to Seattle with that child. I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive.
She actually cared for the
Yeah,
child
and
the
then
whole flight.
Yeah, she really was solid.
Which gave you a totally different impression of
So
her.
I wrote a thank you note that included that among some other things and got a letter back. And I know she'd seen it because it had a handwritten address and a return address, a street address. The only thing is, it wasn't from Joan. It was from her mother. Her mother said to me in this letter, Joan really liked your letter and she wanted me to thank you. And I thought to myself, boy, this is Glenn. The girls, didn't like me so much, but the moms, oh, they all thought highly of me because they knew I was safe. I didn't know how to be a bad guy.
That's funny. With I have 3 boys. Of course, they're grown men now, but I do remember my youngest one saying that, and all the girls like to be just friends.
Yes, my moms love me.
My moms love me.
Well,
all right, so we did 3,
well,
right? We didn't get to the third type, or?
That's 3. The 4th category was the toughest and the best one, and it turned out to be a good reason for all this. And that was to people that I knew personally, who had either done something that I never properly thanked them for, sometimes way back, or for just being a friend, an important part of my life for years.
Influence,
now, how do you write a letter to someone like that without them thinking, oh my goodness, Blair's about ready to die, he's trying to get right with the world?
What does he want?
Yeah, what does he want? The next letter going to be a request for some money or what? But they turned out incredibly well. And I think the best illustration of that one is one that I wrote to a guy who'd been in a fraternity with, a pledge brother of mine years ago at the University of Illinois. And he was a business major, not particularly good, but he was extremely active on campus. And he came back after his freshman year and announced to all of us that he was switching majors. He was going into pre-med. Pre-med at Illinois. That was the most demanding, competitive, difficult thing you could possibly do. So we all just kind of chuckled and thought, well, that won't last. It did. And my memory of him is, because he stayed active, is he'd come back to the house at 9 o'clock or 10 and start studying, and he'd study till 4 in the morning, or he'd study all night. And the end of it all was he got through pre-med, he got through medical school. He recently, not recently, but 5 years ago or so, retired as one of the preeminent orthopedic surgeons in Peoria. It was just a fabulous success story. And I had told this story in my management class at BW, every class, as an illustration of finding your spot, persevering, and it has a great payout. And it occurred to me as in this thank you project, the only person I haven't told that story to was Dick. And he's the guy. So I thought, oh, what's he going to think? You know, he has, and I hadn't communicated with him in 40 years. We weren't on a Christmas card list. We didn't have reunions or anything. It was coming out of cold.
You didn't have Facebook or
No,
anything back
nothing
then.
like that.
So
So,
we
you know, I sent
would
it to
lose
him.
touch with people.
Yeah, and I was concerned how he would react, and he came back with a 2-page thing, just gratitude and joy and pleased that I wrote and come spend the summer with us and that kind of thing. And the other thing about that one that I have to mention, part of the joy of this whole thank you note project, and it was a big plus for me. The thank or gets as much out of this, believe me, as the thank he does. But the big plus of this one was we lived on a house that had a hill and a long driveway down to the mailbox. And I got the letter to Dick done, walked down the hill, put it in, took it out, went back up the hill. My wife said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to take this to the post office. And she says, why are you taking it to the post office? Well, I'm so anxious for him to get it. And she said, but you haven't seen him in 45 years. You think one more day is going to matter? And I said, yeah, I guess. I would have taken it over to the post office.
Once you were there, you were ready for it.
Yeah, because the fun of these thank you notes was just anticipating what the recipients would feel. To get a letter without any restraints or anything, just an unadulterated, pure congratulations.
I love it.
A good illustration of that, if I may, is the letter that I wrote to a mariachi band in Roma, Texas. Just Roma, Texas, about 300 yards from Mexico. And they had a mariachi band that was nationally known. And being in the mariachi band was a better deal than being in the football team on this thing. So I wrote them a note. I get a phone call, little young girl's voice saying, thank you so much. We got your letter and we looked up Medina in the atlas to see what, on the map to see what it's all
Instead
about.
of Medina?
Yes,
Medina,
well, yeah, and she just made a sweet little voice. And at the end of it all, she said, and oh, by the way, we do have CDs for sale if you're interested. So, anyhow,
Nice.
yeah.
So it seems like you got a lot of satisfaction out of that and a great example for others. If I can show this real quick, you did everything on a half page.
Yep.
And
It
you
all
had
looked almost exactly like that. Yeah.
Yep, and a format, very simple, to the point.
Yep.
And each one
Yep.
was just that simple.
Well, and because it has to be simple. If you're going to do one a day, you can't just sit down and invent it all over again. This way, I could just immediately get my thought on there and get it out.
Well, I think especially today, nobody wants to read that
Yeah, that's true.
long of a letter
No,
either.
no,
So
no.
short, sweet,
No.
to the point
Yep,
is great.
yep.
Now that leads me to something else too. So when we were talking, I said, I have these postcards. It says, you are a gem. And on the other side, 5 things I like about you.
I think
Here's
it's a great
one.
idea. It's the same theme, but it's just the way you've got it set it up. It makes it easy for people to
I
express
always
their thoughts.
show this example of if you were to send one, say, to mom, what it would look like. 5 things I like about you. So for our viewers, if you'd like a few of these cards, you just let me know. You can email me or call me or text me. All my contact information is at the beginning and the end of the show. And I printed thousands, so I'd be happy to send you some so you can make somebody's day and, again, make yourself feel good too.
Absolutely.
While you're sending them.
Can I tell you quickly the karma of this whole thing that came back again to me? I won't get into the reasons really, but Philip Morris, who is a plain dealer columnist, a brilliant writer, did a column about the Thank You Note Project. And he did that on a Sunday. That was when his column shows up. And so on a Sunday, out comes this column that made me look like a hero. He's such a good writer. He made me look way beyond what I am. And the following Wednesday, I was just inundated by letters and comments and phone calls and emails from college, everybody. Just a huge pick-me-up. And the thing that was unique about that Wednesday is that was the exact 1-year anniversary of my wife's death. Mm-hmm. So to have this coincidence or divine intervention, to have this wonderful, positive, uplifting thing occur on potentially a really dark day for me is just, I don't know, it's almost weird, spooky. But I believe that's what the thank you thing has done. It just keeps on going.
Well, yeah, because
It
your
just keeps on
project, it
going.
was in 2001, and then this is just a few years ago.
Absolutely.
That it's still alive.
It is alive,
That's what I love.
and it just keeps on going because some of the people that responded to that column that Philip Morris wrote said that they were going to write somebody. And so that's how it goes. So,
I love it. Well, we're ready for ageless advice.
oh boy.
And I wish we could talk actually for hours, Glenn, because you are a pleasure to talk with.
Well,
and
thank you very much.
I really enjoyed all the time that we've had in
thank you.
preparing for this. So let me just ask you this. So you're 84 years old.
Yep.
You've suffered a huge loss.
Yes, I did.
Losing your spouse. So at this point in time, what gets you up in the morning? What helps you get out of bed, get going, keep moving?
Well, the literal answer is a little Shih Tzu named Winnie, but that's not quite where you're going, I don't think.
Your little dog.
You know, I think it's just a matter of wanting to just live a full life, even though it's not as good as it would have been if my wife were still here. There's just no reason to not keep going. And so I'm really good on, I think, on projects. And I like to have something interesting, something like this, kind of scheduled periodically, along with the things you have to do. So when I get up in the morning, I'm just kind of anxious to get out and do it. And I've always kind of been that way. Getting up's never been a problem. It's just exciting to, well, and first of all, to be able to do that. That's a gift that you can't ignore.
But I guess from my experience, even those who cannot get up and get out, doesn't it seem really great to have something on the calendar?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. No, it doesn't have to be. And I've sort of thought about that. What would my life be like if I were in a wheelchair? And I can think of all kinds of things. I switch around. I do things differently, obviously. But it's, you know, there's some wonderful stories about what people can do that can't do what I can do physically right now.
So lessons for everybody watching anyway. Projects, keep things on the calendar, keep moving forward.
Yeah. And all the evidence says that the social interaction and the brain interaction is good for you.
Right.
And I believe it.
I do too. So again, you've had some hardship for sure. What would you say is the best medicine for heartbreak or loss?
Well, I think acceptance is, if I just could pick one word, acceptance. Just acknowledging that whatever has happened to you, it's not because it's you. It's called life. My wife died at age 79, and it's a terrible loss, but you know, that's what happens to people when they're 79. It's just the way it goes, and just the acceptance that that's normal and nobody is punishing me or anything is so important. And then if you want to really get thoughtful, think of all the people who had much bigger tragedies than those. A 54-year marriage that was perfect, dying at 79, quickly, from diagnosis to death, that's almost a gift that many people don't have.
So let me just say, what a wonderful attitude you have. And we can all learn from that. Thank you.
Well, but again,
You have to work it.
It wasn't tough for some people.
So what is your recommendation for technology? And I ask that because I know you're on the computer. And when you reached out to me, you emailed me.
Yeah.
You stay
I think I'm not a techie guy. I'm not an engineering kind of guy at all. I don't do anything technologically that just for the fun of it. And I have friends who just thrive on that. I think the technology is just here to help you. It happens that I think you need to know as much technology as you have to do what you want to do. I've got to have Word. I've got to have Excel. I've got to have Publisher. I've got to have some video kind of device. I've got to be able to know how to do certain things on the cell phone and all that. But I don't go any further than that. When I can do what I really want to do, and I used to be a lot better, but I don't have as many things to do. I think that's all you need to do. And tied to that, it's just remarkable how things have changed. Libraries like this have the most incredibly good programs, kind of designed for older people.
kind of no excuse to not learn things.
Well, there really isn't. And I went to a session where they explained generally how to transfer things like 8mm film to a DVD. And there's people in that room, there were 40 people in there. It was packed. And the average age was 112, I think. But in any event, it was just marvelous because they've got boxes of 8mm film. And they could get it down to one disc that would be perfect to pass on.
Right.
So.
Yep. Well, I love that you do. And also, if I might mention, you do text. And you text,
I do, yeah.
Right? You text your daughter every morning.
That's kind of her way of knowing I made it through the night.
But I recommend that to everybody who lives alone at any age. And I do it myself. I already have for a year or two. And I think it's great. Everybody should do that, be able to have somebody they can check in with every
And it's
day.
kind of bizarre that my daughter feels that I need that, and yet she's been living by herself for many years without it.
So
What
she needs
happened
it
there?
too.
You know, I guess her health is better than mine, probably. But
I don't think it matters.
no, I don't
Anybody
either. Because you
could
could slip in
fall
the
and-
bathtub.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter. So our last question. Definitely, you are a wonderful example of aging gracefully, Glenn.
Thank you.
What is the secret? What could
Of
you
aging
recommend?
gracefully.
The secret
Well,
of aging gracefully
I think,
for you.
again, I think acceptance is the key in so many of these things, because you know that you can't play tennis like you once did, you can't sing like you once did, but that's not anything other than the natural progress of life. It just involves losing these skills. And if you fight losing these skills, if you resist, it's just not going to help anybody. It's pointless. So I think just accepting that you are what you are and being comfortable with it is really important in aging gracefully. A term, by the way, I think is terrific. I never had thought about until I met you. And the other thing, too, that we can't forget, those of us who are 84 and were able to drive over here on my own and sit up in the chair upright for at least a half an hour, is there are a lot of people who never get a chance to age gracefully. There are people who lost their lives in the service of the country. There are people who've been in auto accidents and factory accidents and incredible tragedies of tornadoes and disease and all that kind of thing. They never got a chance to age gracefully as I have. And it just seems to me that if you did get that chance, you ought to be grateful, and you ought to do it with some grace. Just in sort of an acknowledgement how blinking lucky you are to be where you are. And my friends, I happen to be friends with a lot of people who've had good luck in that regard. And we just, our common thought is when we get up in the day, yes, another chance. Because, you know, you measure life when you're younger from when you were born. Oh, she's 16. Oh, my goodness, 21. 40, over the hill, all that. But when you get to my age, you measure life in terms of how many good days you have left. That's all you can do. And you don't know how many they are. Of course, you never did, but you didn't think about it back then. So you just have to imagine, what could I do today that I would like to do that would be good for other people? That's, if you could just do that and get one more day, and then another day, and one day you wake up and you're 100 years old, maybe.
Hopefully,
Hopefully.
right.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
I'm so grateful for our new friendship. I hope we stay friends forever.
Well, I hope so too.
I
Yeah.
hope you live forever.
Yes.
Keep
yes.
going. I love your attitude of gratitude and acceptance and all the things that you've taught me and are sharing with the viewers. So thank you so much for
Well,
being here.
It's good. I taught college. I like to talk. This is I enjoy this opportunity very much. So thank you very much.
And to my viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. If you would like to leave any comments, please give me a call, email, text. You can also go to my website, aginggracefully.tv, where you could watch this interview over and over. You can also leave comments below and also have some articles of all kinds of quick to read information as well. I think you'll enjoy it. So go to www.aginggracefully.tv.